So first of all, I would like to welcome Professor Venu Wangla on behalf of myself and on behalf of Physics Department, Lucknow University. And we are very happy to have you with us. We have very long collaboration with Venu. And when it was started when Venu was in the A-Star Singapore, and first time I met him there only. And then it continued. We have many joint publication collaboration is going on, and we hope we will come out with some more interesting work soon. Okay. So, and Venu is, you all know that Venu is will talk about the crystal engineering, and he's working at the as a professor at the University of Bradford. He's teaching there in the Department of Pharmaceutical, I think, chemistry there, University of Bradford. He's there, I think, for the last few years, 4 years or something. And he will tell you more. And he is PhD from University of Hyderabad, and like with very famous person, Professor Gautam Desraju, who did pioneering work in the field of crystal engineering. And after doing his PhD, later on he was a postdoc, he did a postdoc, and then he was in A-Star Singapore, and now he's faculty there. So I request Dr. Venu to please start your presentation, share your screen and start your presentation.
Yeah. Is my screen visible, Professor Poonam?
Yeah. Yeah, your screen is visible to us. Yeah. Good.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Poonam.
You continue because I am now muting myself. Okay.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
It is my great pleasure to be here in front of you. This is a very, very good turnaround. At the outset, I would like to thank Professor Poonam Tandon and also University of Lucknow for arranging this massive talk. I couldn't be asking for any more. So this is my really immense pleasure to talk to talk to you all and talk about my research work that I have been engaged for some time. My topic for today is crystal engineering for the pharmaceuticals development. As Professor Tandon mentioned already, we have had a long collaboration, maybe now nearly 6 to 7 years. I would say that I am quite pleasant with the way collaboration started and going on with the University of Lucknow, A-Star Singapore, and now with the University of Bradford. Our collaboration is a very excellent experience and also very productive as well. We could able to produce more than 10 publications now, and it is going on further. So we will also talk a little bit more if we get a chance in the end about how our collaboration is spanning now. So just to get into the talk contents now.
Hello, Venu. Yeah. Venu, I would like to interrupt in between. There is some voice is very slow. Their participants are telling this. Please increase your voice.
My voice is low?
Yeah.
I will try this one and
please look into the chat box if there are some comments and try to take into account those comments. Yeah, okay. Very low voice, he's saying. Yeah.
Just a second.
Yeah. And maybe I request all participants to please switch off your videos, okay? Because bandwidth issue is there. Please switch off your video, okay? So that maybe the system, it can be better. Yeah.
Just confirm, Professor Poonam, about this one, if this is any better.
1 minute, I am muting everyone. I will unmute. Just wait.
Yeah, Professor Poonam, how is this one?
Just wait. Yes, Venu. Hello?
Is this any better?
Yeah, please tell the participants, please drop the message. Is it better? Voice is okay now. Voice is okay now. Yeah.
Now voice is
You can
better
start.
than.
Maybe you can start from the beginning. Okay.
I'm just trying to put the chat box here, so
yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is better now. Participants are saying it is better now. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes. You can proceed now.
Yeah, I'm not able to view the chat, but for now it is fine. When we get to the question and answer session, we'll think about more about it. Sorry for this technical issue. Hope all of you are now able to hear me. Without further delay, let's get started with the talk. So as Professor Poonam Tandon is explaining about my research experience and expertise is around crystal engineering. I started as a fundamental crystal engineer, and for the last few years, I have been trying to use my fundamental concepts that I gained around the organic crystal engineering into the pharmaceuticals development. So as you know, crystal engineering now has a wide variety of applications you could see. When it was started in 1970s, probably, not many I mean, it was more of a fundamental science that was the state of the art at the time, and it has utilized the crystalline structure as a starting point and intermolecular interactions, in particular hydrogen bonds. You will hear during this entire track many times about it. So using those intermolecular interactions and solid state arrangement, scientists and researchers across the world have been working on in very many different areas. For instance, crystal engineering now has found many applications in the pharmaceutical side. Pharmaceuticals, not only pharmaceuticals, but nutraceuticals, uh, dyes, pigments, even in the explosives, fuel cells as a gas storage systems with the metal organic frameworks that again underlying principles come from the crystal engineering. Now we are trying to slowly move from organic to metal organic to
Venu,
Yeah.
again the voice is very low.
Uh,
The participants are saying the voice is very low.
how about this?
Please comment now.
Is it any better, Professor Poonam?
Yeah, now better. Please proceed. Is it better? I am writing on the chat box, please. Yeah, now it is okay. Yeah. Now proceed.
Yeah, so crystal engineering has found many different application areas. As I was continuing, you could also see in the material science for non-pharmaceuticals, semiconductors, photolithography, and many more areas you could see. But my today's talk will be more focused on crystal engineering for the pharmaceuticals development. So before I continue with my research work, I would like to a little bit bring about the Bradford particle design and success story that we have at the Center for Pharmaceutical Engineering and Science. Currently it is. So if you could see on the bottom of the slide on the right hand side, Professor Peter York, he is an emeritus status now. He has been a very renowned scientist in the world for the design of particle and crystals. Using the supercritical fluid technology, he could able to get his science into the innovation side, and that led to 200 millions worth of commercial success. This is by far in the United Kingdom the highest revenue generated by any university in the academic setup, from a science innovation to the commercial success. So that's where Bradford has the legacy of doing science into the commercial side. So under that legacy, Center for Pharmaceutical Engineering Science has been installed. From the inception, Professor Anant Paradkar is the director and leading the center. Our current objectives of the center includes, not limited to, the understanding of materials and also tailor the materials properties. So our bigger picture goal is clear. We wanted to cater to the pharmaceutical companies and nutraceutical companies and solve pharmaceutical solutions, offer the solutions to the companies, or it could be small and medium-sized companies and so on. And ultimately, we would like to reach our science and innovation to the patient directly. It could be through working with the pharmacists who attend the problems of the patients, or through the science that we built. For example, personalized medicine could be one thing that we can think of. These are the directions we are heading now. With this Bradford introduction, I will go back to the fundamentals of crystal engineering. So as I was mentioned before, in 1955, Pepinski introduced the term crystal engineering, and actual work of crystal engineering has occurred in 1970s by Gerhard Schmidt using the photochemical reactions. However, in the late 80s, Professor Gautam Desiraju introduced, defined crystal engineering as understanding of intermolecular interactions. And today, actually, we see the definition implications. If you look at the bottom of the slide, design of new solids with desired physical and chemical properties. Actually, in this time of crystal engineers who could figure out and relate, this is the time of using this science into the application side. So coming to my areas of interest, currently I'm focusing on pharmaceutical material science. This is what I'm going to focus more today. Otherwise, green processing technologies, this is what we have very good infrastructure at the Bradford. And one other very close to my research areas is crystallization in the physiological conditions. Not today I will be talking about, but sometime in future, this is something I'm working on at this moment also. So as mentioned before, our interest is to head towards the drug delivery and offer patient-directed solutions. So for this today's talk, crystal engineering, one of the main advantages of crystal engineering is to utilize the co-crystallization concepts, which has multiple applications, again, beyond pharmaceuticals, but also explosive side, pigments, nutraceuticals, agrochemicals, and many other areas as well. So even photolithography too. Professor Leonard McGillivray is working on photolithography. Probably he may give some e-talk. You may look for such contents. So today I would like to give contents very simple, which is photostabilization using the co-crystallization, and what are the mechanical properties that could be achieved through the co-crystals, and also based on the current need of the pharma industry, and also given the state of scientific challenges at this hand, formulation issues around the co-crystals. Co-crystals has emerged as a significant area which has attracted not only academic fraternity, but also industry has been quite keen on producing something out of co-crystals. Just to let you know that there are also FDA approved molecules in the state of affair, and also some of them are in the final stages of producing drugs into the market. So, but having said this, what are the current challenges around the co-crystals formulation also that we have experienced within the recent time? I would like to focus on those as well. Mixing and milling, what are those? We'll see when we get to that. So as you all know, I don't want to spend much time on this, but solid forms or crystalline forms exist in very many different forms, polymorphs you are aware of. I have seen Indo-Brazilian conference, and I could see some of the audience today attending also attended at that point of time. So these are various solid forms. There is also amorphous solid, which is a no one-dimensional crystalline lattice or no long-range order. That could be something could also be used widely, quite popularly also in the pharma industry. But majority of the drugs are delivered via oral route, and also using the crystalline form for the manufacturability advantages, or for the cost and other handling of the material as well, stability concerns as well. So salt is another type of crystalline state. So co-crystals, what are these co-crystals? I'm sure majority of the audiences today don't need to be given this definition, but in the interest of some of the wide variety of audience also I could see today, and also for the general audience, I would like to say that co-crystals are nothing but these are molecular complexes where more than one component is existing, coexisting in the crystalline lattice. For instance, API I mentioned here, which is active pharmaceutical ingredient, and a coformer. A coformer is an additive molecule which is intermolecularly linked to the active drug in the crystalline lattice, which because of hydrogen bonds or halogen bonds or pi interactions, which may offer in tailoring the properties. So as you see the diagram here, you have a drug here and you have coformer. It might give you co-crystal. So why are we interested in the co-crystals then? Because of the novelty, utility, and non-obviousness that co-crystal molecules will produce from the APIs is one thing, and non-ionized APIs could be difficult to prepare co-crystals. It could be difficult to prepare salts because you need to have acid-based groups in the system molecular level functional groups. So if you do not have such things, probably co-crystallization could be more suitable. Existing compounds, existing co-crystals in the market are FDA approved, for instance, is Entresto. And there are also some other things, Suglat, celecoxib, tramadol, ertugliflozin, phioxyproline. These are some other drug co-crystals. And also, I would like to draw your attention on this slide. Existing co-crystals in the market include, these are already there. We have been using without realizing that they are co-crystals. We presented this work in, it's a multi-author review, where we proposed a nomenclature around the co-crystals. There you could see caffeine citrate, sodium valproate, valproic acid, acetylopram, oxalate, and oxalic acid. Some of the co-authors are already presenting today as well. So this is where we have written a review article with Srinivasulu Aitapamla from Singapore A-Star organization. So here we try to compile by then whatever the important pre-formulation studies are available in the literature. We try to put them together. Our main interest was to look at into what are the impacts of solid state structure or crystalline structure. If we understand it, can we extrapolate a bit and then understand the pharmaceutical properties at all? So this is where this review article is there. If you get a chance, please go through. So we know that co-crystals offer a wide variety of advantages. For instance, solubility, dissolution rate, and also which is going to impact bioavailability. Majority of the times positively, but not guaranteed that co-crystallization would give you advantage of increase of solubility. So it could go either way. You need to understand the structure. That's where we try to link the crystalline structure to the pharmaceutical properties. So we know all these advantages. Crystal engineering has helped immensely in generating the co-crystals, and which has offered these advantages. So I would like to draw your attention on this particular slide. Here, this is my very first research article. So we also said in that review that from 2004 onwards, a formal beginning of pharmaceutical co-crystals has come. However, this is my one of my first research finding, where I have been when I was working with Professor Gautam Desiraju. I was looking at into the intermolecular interactions containing molecules that have functional groups of amine and phenol. So along those lines, we extended to look at thiol SH group in the similar lines of OH, and see if that has any complementary interactions between amine and thiol. So what happened interestingly was we just took aminothiophenol, which is a low melting solid, and we bought it from the commercial source. When we kept in the for the normal storage for use, what happened was some of 4-aminothiophenol may have undergone aerial oxidation. A small quantity of disulfide compound may have formed. We didn't realize it. We were trying to recrystallize 4-aminothiophenol. And what we have observed in the crystal structure was it is a combination of disulfide containing compound with the 4-aminothiophenol, which is, we said molecular complex at that time. This is, we also refer to co-crystal. So this publication has appeared in 2002. So we have experience working with the co-crystals for quite some time. So with this background in mind, I will now go on to the case studies. So the first case study is about looking into the photosensitivity of photosensitive drugs. We have chosen this project because majority of studies were focusing on the solubility, bioavailability enhancement, physical stability. So we thought that whether co-crystallization would offer any photostability at all, because this is going to impact your quality, safety, and efficacy, and this is also have some influence on the packaging too. So with that in mind, we have started working with the nitrofurantoin, which is an antibiotic used for the urinary tract infections. It has also poor physicochemical properties, but our main intention was to look some photosensitive active drug and prepare a co-crystal and see if we can change its photosensitivity, or can we circumvent the photosensitivity behavior. So that has led into a major project for us, and still nitrofurantoin work is on with Professor Poonam Tandon. We have done a lot of computational studies also based on nitrofurantoin. The members like Iram Khan, Anuradha Shukla, Karnika, these all have contributed to quantum chemical and density functional theory calculations, and also we try to see the chemical reactivity. So for now, we look at into the photosensitivity of this compound nitrofurantoin. We try to co-crystallize with additive compounds using solution crystallization. Here I would like to draw a little bit of your attention that these are not by any means exclusive techniques, but these are some of the popular techniques, I would say, technologies, I would say, for producing the co-crystals as well. So these hot melt extrusion, microfluidics, micro-assisted co-crystallization, ultrasound spray drying, rotary evaporator. So these are green processing technologies as well. We have all these technologies available at the Center for Pharmaceutical Engineering Science at Bradford. So for my nitrofurantoin crystallization, co-crystallization, initially we prepared the first co-crystal of nitrofurantoin with 4-hydroxybenzoic acid. The problem this nitrofurantoin has is during the storage, it becomes a monohydrate, nitrofurantoin monohydrate. This is going to cause changes to the poor tabletability or poor physical properties. So this is the physical stability issue. So that we try to explore. Since we have a co-crystal, we try to study accelerated and also room temperature storage study. We expose the materials, both nitrofurantoin itself and also nitrofurantoin 4-hydroxybenzoic acid to the relative humidity and also temperature conditions that I mentioned here. So what we have found was nitrofurantoin was converting in the first test to the extent of 7.4% degradation is seen, or that has converted into the monohydrate, and in the other case to 11.2%. So whereas co-crystal has almost no change in it. This is a very good sign. So co-crystals are offering physicochemical stability. There were also 1 or 2 examples by then, the time when we published this one for the physicochemical stability. So then we continue to look at into the photostability behaviors. So we have taken drug and also co-crystal and exposed to the UV light and for 24 hours, and we extended that study to actually 1 week. And what we have seen is co-crystal has offered a degree of stabilization compared to nitrofurantoin itself. So it has not completely stabilized, but by incorporating additive molecule into the crystalline lattice has offered some stabilization. So we looked at into the crystal structure of nitrofurantoin and 4-hydroxybenzoic acid. And we also continue to prepare some more co-crystals of nitrofurantoin. For instance, I posted here a co-crystal of nitrofurantoin with the 3-aminobenzoic acid. So we try to look at the mechanistic action of this behavior, why nitrofurantoin is degrading at all. What we figured out was nitrofurantoin is undergoing, when it is exposed to the light, undergoing cis-trans isomerization. If you see, this is the C double bond N, this is the labile group, which is converting. There is a very rapid conversions from cis to trans to cis. Trans is the most stable, and that is the commercial form. So which is followed by the hydrolysis, and you can see furfural and hydentine. So this is what mechanistically nitrofurantoin degradation is taking place. So when we prepared the co-crystal of nitrofurantoin with the 3-aminobenzoic acid, what happened was there is a very interestingly complete stabilization of co-crystal, whereas nitrofurantoin degraded to the same extent. So then we try to understand, can we correlate it to the crystal structure properties at all? When we looked at the crystal structure of 3-aminobenzoic acid, which is bonding to the nitrofurantoin of various heteroatoms, oxygens here, nitrogen and oxygen here. So because of this folding, this is because of the locking of your coformer to the nitrofurantoin has offered a complete stabilization, or it is arresting cis-trans isomerization. So accordingly, you could see photo degradation studies where a complete photostabilization has occurred. Just to continue, not to talk about details of the nitrofurantoin further co-crystals, but we have prepared very many co-crystal structures of nitrofurantoin. So we have also determined the solubility, dissolution profiles. So what question we have was whether this particular photostabilization is restricted or confined to the just nitrofurantoin, or can we extrapolate that analogy to some other APIs or not? This is when we started looking at the crystal structure of carbamazepine. Carbamazepine has two ways of oxidation, or 2+2 cyclodimerization. You could see on the left side panel. So these are the two ways when it is exposed to sunlight or UV light. This is what happens to the carbamazepine. If you look at the crystal structure of carbamazepine in the bottom side of left, you could see the arrangement of carbamazepine molecules. Because of the close arrangement stacking, if the distance is about 3.6 to 4 angstrom, then you could expect to have this photodimerization. So what we did was, we have already by then these results still need to be published. So we know that the crystal structure of carbamazepine saccharin has been published in way back in 2003. So when you look at the crystal structure with the saccharin, saccharin has altered the crystalline lattice of carbamazepine. So with that in mind, we explored the photostabilization studies, and we have found that both carbamazepine saccharin and carbamazepine nicotinamide have offered photostabilization. So this study, this is the first of its kind when we published this photostabilization using the co-crystallization technology. In the recent time, there were a few studies from the Chinese groups. They have looked at into vitamin D and some other cases also what photostabilization could be offered if you prepare co-crystals. So now I will move on to the next case study where mechanical properties of nitrofurantoin-based co-crystals have undertaken. So majority of you are aware of the fact that if you prepare the co-crystals, you are going to change the mechanical properties of the material overall. Compressibility could be increased. There is a very popular example of paracetamol. If it is prepared co-crystal, it is going to offer a very good tabletability. So having said this, in the beginning, I also pointed out about we are changing the crystalline lattice. That doesn't mean it is going to offer advantage in the properties. That is what exactly we try to attain through this. Mechanical properties, just to quickly catch up on, when you compress the tablet, you could experience this fracture, lamination, capping, sticking to the punch. These are common tendencies you could see. That's why we need some formulation technology, or we need some molecular level of manipulations to get desired properties for the pharmaceuticals. So in the typical formulation setup, you can see API excipients are incorporated. You can also see various formulation unit operations. We can see mixing, granulation, milling, compaction, coating, and that leads to the tablet. So it used to be the art than the science. Even now it is, but still science can help with designing your mechanical properties. This is what the example I'm referring to. William Jones has published this work some time ago in 2009. So when paracetamol alone was there, you could see the changes to the tablet, but once you prepare the co-crystal, that has offered. So having said this, what we have experienced was Professor Kelvinson from the University of Minnesota has helped us with these studies. So we have undertaken 5 or 6 co-crystal studies for the mechanical properties, but for a representative example for you, I posted here nitrofurantoin with the urea. What happened was, if you look at these profiles against the tensile strength, when you apply the pressure, what happens to the crystalline materials? Nitrofurantoin has a higher tensile strength compared to urea, and co-crystal in fact has shown poor compressibility properties. So then we try to look at the crystal structures and see if we can understand anything. So at Bradford, Nitin has prepared these materials and studied on these systems. If you look at the crystal structure, nitrofurantoin itself is forming some layered structure. So between these layers, you have weak interactions that could sustain, that could resist any force that is impacted on the system. As such, nitrofurantoin offered some slip planes and also some resistance compared to co-crystal, in fact. So if you look at the urea crystal structure, what you have seen is some intertape spacing. So this is offering some kind of cushion. Once you apply some pressure in this plane, 100 plane, it is offering some kind of cushion it could resist to. So whereas with co-crystal structure, what happened is it has formed some interlocked structure where if you apply pressure from any particular direction, 010 plane or the other side, you could experience crystals are quite brittle and then they are bound to break. So that's how we could see crystal structure properties to the mechanical behavior of co-crystal in this instance. For that matter, nitrofurantoin with all of the co-crystals we prepared showed all of them poor mechanical properties. So it is the understanding, it is the crystal structure arrangement that is going to impact your properties. So I covered in the summary. In the interest of time, probably I would now move on to the co-crystals formulation side. Development around the design and synthesis and also physicochemical properties. We have seen a lot of studies by the academia and also some of the industry groups as well. Current state of affairs are that we need more development and understanding in the formulations. So this is our recent review article. Here I mentioned Malaz Yousaf. She was a MSc student here, and as a critical appraisal project, she took up co-crystal formulations. That has led to the review article. This is quite commendable. This is the first systematic review based on exclusively on the co-crystal formulation. So we try to cover majority of the co-crystal formulations reported by end of last year, try to put them together. So what we need is we have a good understanding and experience in the molecular level, and we need to understand how co-crystals behave when it goes to the formulation side, where a lot of additives need to be added to bring that formulation into the market. So that is where we need more understanding. So this is UOB, University of Bradford. This is our Bradford practice. So with that brief background about the co-crystal formulations, our first case study I would like to take is destabilization of co-crystal during the processing. So during processing, materials are exposed to solvents, additives, temperature. These are all going to also impact your stability of your co-crystal or integrity of your co-crystal. This is where a lot of studies are currently going on in the field. So this work has been primarily performed by Bashir Al-Sirawan. He is a postdoc now with Center for Pharmaceutical Engineering Science. Otherwise, he was a PhD student under Prof. Anant, and I was also a co-supervisor to him. Sudhir has supported this project. He is currently research knowledge transfer associate, RKT officer, research and knowledge transfer. So coming to this particular project, what we have tried to address was by the time we started this project in 15 and 16, we know that caffeine co-crystals have been reported in 2005 and 6, I think, by William Jones. We know these co-crystals exist. Caffeine forms co-crystals with oxalic acid, malonic acid, glutaric acid, malic acid. So what we wanted to find out was in the co-crystal of, for instance, caffeine and oxalic acid. If you add an additive, that could be any additive excipient. For instance, to simplify the study, what we have taken was one of these structurally similar dicarboxylic acid. When I'm talking about the next slide is quite simple. I think this is easy to follow. Co-crystal we have taken. It could be caffeine oxalic acid. A co-former could be malonic acid or glutaric acid, malic acid, for instance, at least one of them. And we subjected to these slurry conditions and see what happens. And similarly, we have also extended such studies with the dry grinding. We have taken co-crystal, co-former, and made a grinding and see what happened to the system. This slide is slightly busy. I would like to draw your attention that caffeine oxalic acid co-crystal, if you take and mix with malonic acid, glutaric acid, malic acid, so nothing has impacted in any way. So caffeine oxalic acid co-crystal was completely stable. So by adding any of these additives has not altered the crystal structure or not broken down or dissociated. So whereas if you look at this particular example, I will draw your attention to. When you take caffeine malic acid 1:1 co-crystal, when you add glutaric acid to it, what was resulted was caffeine glutaric acid. Here, caffeine, when you add malonic acid, it has formed caffeine malonic acid. It was no more caffeine malic acid, but it has become, during the processing, it has become caffeine malonic acid, caffeine oxalic acid. So what I would like to summarize from this work is, based on the interactions that co-former is going to play around the co-crystal in the formulation conditions or processing conditions, it is going to significantly impact your co-crystal integrity. So this is continued studies with the dry grinding, where this particular example only I will draw your attention to. When caffeine and malic acid is taken and impacted with the glutaric acid, here glutaric acid is still there. So whereas in this one, glutaric acid has replaced. So just to, we have also conducted some lattice energy calculations and saw what is happening with each of them. So more negative energy represents the stability of the system. So in the slurry conditions, what we figured out was the mixing is more efficient. During that point of time, you can expect more things, more vulnerable things than with the dry grinding. So this is more prone to dissociation slurry condition. So this is where you wanted to test your formulation setup. So you have a co-crystal and you wanted to test under vigorous conditions at this stage. So we are taking the stable co-crystal system forward. This is the last case study where co-crystals have advanced so much, but by the time we started this study, none of the research groups were focusing about how co-crystals will behave during the micronization. When you apply some mechanical stress on the material, whether they are undergoing any changes, for example, surface amorphization, followed by the physicochemical changes, polymorphs forming, whether it is stable or not. These were the studies not performed for the co-crystals at that point of time. Now there are a couple of studies existing now. So again, we have taken here caffeine glutaric acid system. We have we have investigated polymorphic behavior of this system. So what we found out was there are two polymorphic forms are possible for this co-crystal. One is form 1, which is metastable form. Form 2 is stable form. So we try to do some in situ X-ray diffraction studies to investigate the phase transformation or what is the transition temperature. We did some Rietveld analysis. I'm not going into the details of this particular work, but what we have done was thermodynamic investigations we thoroughly carried out, and we understood what is the relationship between these two polymorphs, which is enantiotropic dimorphs. So with that idea in mind, we have taken a stable form, which is caffeine glutaric acid form 2. This is our starting material. So we have used a solution bulk scale process. One of our colleagues called Yushan, he prepared solution, via solution crystallization, like 500 grams, 1 kg of material. And we use this form 2, which is the stable form, and subjected to two of the very commonly used milling processes. One is a planetary ball mill, another one is jet mill. So what happened was, when we use the planetary ball mill, which is more energy intensive, by first 15 minutes, you could see form 2 has converted into the form 1. And by 25 minutes, you could see more of form 1 started coming. So at each stage, even we are not able to see anything here, but there is also a minute quantity of transformation, phase transformation has occurred by 5 minutes only. So this is, we have done again extensive Rietveld analysis of each of these powder pattern and see to what extent this conversion has happened. And by 5 minutes, you could see 2% of form 1 has happened. And similarly for other two extended times, the increase in formation of metastable form 1. So these are the scanning electron microscopy images. You could see this is the scaled up co-crystal of caffeine glutaric acid. When you milled the sample for 5 minutes, you could see already there are form 1 needle shape materials are there. If you look at further for the 25 minutes, by 15 minutes, you could already see there is a polymorphic change. And by 15 minutes, by 25 minutes, these two were taken at the 25 minutes. There is a significant amount of phase impurity. So this is a jet mill sample. In the jet mill sample, we have conducted in various grinding pressure and also injection time. And in all the tested conditions, what we have found was there is no appreciable physical changes, which is a very good sign. And the SEM images, again, scanning electron microscopy images, if you see, in all of these, particle size distribution is changing. Particle sizes are getting finer, which is useful, but there are no physicochemical changes. So this is ideal. So summarize this work, jet mill is suitable for this particular system. And if you look at ball milling, you could see metastable formation. And in the jet milling, form 2 was stable through entire micronization process. We also proposed the mechanism of planetary ball mill. What happened was, if you increase the time of, I would refer back to this particular slide. By increasing the time of milling, agglomeration was seen. We proposed a mechanism that by increasing the temperature at the local surface, it is already reaching probably the temperature for the melting of this co-crystal on the surface, and this is started coming together and forming agglomerates. So we continued also with this interesting system on the mechanical properties with caffeine glutaric acid, which is a dimorphic co-crystal, form 1 and form 2. This has major work of this has been done by Manish Mishra. He is now currently working at the University of Minnesota, and Professor Malareddy has long-standing experience with the mechanical properties. If you look at the crystal structure of Form 1, caffeine, it has a nice layer structure formation, and in this 001 plane, you have very good slip planes, and interlayer distance is quietly spaced, and this looks to be, this is supposed to deliver some softness in the mechanical properties. Having said this, if you look at the Form 2, which is a stable crystal, this is what we wanted to see. What happens with this also has slip planes. However, the arrangement of crystalline lattice is corrugated in shape. When you apply stress from two directions, 100 or 001, it has shown that because of the alignment of crystal packing, despite it has slip planes, it has shown harder crystals. So we looked at the nano indentation properties. Higher represents the hardness. This is P by H distribution. We have taken two phases. One is 100 and 001 for the both Form 1 and Form 2. What we have noticed was Form 2 is harder crystal compared to 7 times harder compared to the Form 1. If you look at the overall big picture, what we have noted was hardness is less for the Form 1. However, elastic modulus, if you look at brittle index, young modulus, if you look at overall, Form 2 has shown improved elastic modulus. Hence, we summarize that Form 2 crystals, they are stable and they are very good starting candidates to take it forward for the compressibility studies. So with this case studies, what I conclude is co-crystallization is a very powerful tool for manipulating and positively tailoring the properties of active drugs, which are photosensitive. And co-crystallization, just co-crystallization need not always afford very favorable pharmaceutical properties. We need to understand their lattice and internal structure and very many other things before we come to a conclusion that just by going to the co-crystallization, we are going to get some advantage out of it. So high plasticity is critical for good tableting properties. So I would like to summarize in the last that crystal engineering based formulation development. So crystal engineering has fundamental principles all are there in the literature. By using crystal engineering principles, if we develop formulations, we are better off with the control or understanding the material properties, and we may perhaps attain the challenges that we experienced during the production of co-crystals for the drug development. So I acknowledge the few people to start off the funders. These are the funding which helped in carrying out the work that I have discussed so far. Prof. Anant, as a CPS head, is always there to support us, and the fundamental concepts to use into the application. He is very good at that, helping to the team. The other people I have covered here, and Aditya is continuing research work now, and probably in the next time we will cover some of his research work. Many others I have included before, so I would like to pay particular attention to the University of Lucknow here. Thank you, Professor Poonam Tandon, for your time and invitation and arranging this massive conference. So I also thank Professor Alessandro Ayala. We have collaboration within these systems, and the students actually performed a lot of quantum mechanical calculations. Some of them have been discussed during the Indo-Brazilian conference that has conducted by Prof. Poonam and Prof. Ayala recently. So for that sake, I did not include any of the studies. Otherwise, I thank Iram, Anuradha, Karnika, and Jaya is conducting some diuretic properties now. Thank you for your patience and I'm ready to take questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Venu, for very nice lecture and very nice lecture. And I invite questions in the chat box. Please drop your questions in the chat box. Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Professor Poonam, I am a little bit trying to find out the chat active. I couldn't get last time. Let's see.
Yeah, the questions I'm just looking. Thank you very much. Is there any question from the participants? Everybody's writing very excellent talk and very informative presentation. Thank you for organizing. Yeah, what about the co-crystal size? Whether it is color crystal or colorless crystal?
I am trying to see if I can get chat, but what was the question exactly? What do they refer to?
What about?
Hi, Professor Poonam, are you there? Yeah, just I will pick up some questions here. What are the challenges in scalability of manufacturing of co-crystals? The challenge is the solubility difference between API. API means also somebody was asking, API is active pharmaceutical ingredient. In simple terms, it is drug. So the solubility difference between drug and an additive, that is going to play a significant role in scaling up with the challenges. So you need to have a solvent that should be amenable to surpass these solubility differences. That's why there are also studies with the green processing technologies, such as hot melt extrusion and the likes, some other technologies that could be used to enhance your scalability. However, you need to also take in account that purity of the sample need to be ensured 100%. The chat, I could able to get it now. It is moving a little faster. Let me pick up some questions. How can we connect the crystal engineering with material science? Whatever the materials you are working on, I mean, these are, again, crystal engineering deals with the solid state properties. It could be any materials, pharmaceutical and otherwise organic materials, organometallic materials. So these are all materials by the end of the day. So crystal engineering will help you in understanding the crystalline lattice. That understanding perhaps may be tapped on and take the advantage of it in designing or developing particular properties. Yeah.
Yeah, Venu, now I can unmute there was some issue with my mobile. I was traveling, so I was on mobile. Now I am on my laptop. So I was shifting to the laptop to mobile. There are some more questions. Can you see the questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Physical appearance
of yeah, I will try to read and try to attend.
Yeah.
investigating the biological effect with the help of co-crystal formation, how much effective it is. Thank you for asking. From the research scholar from zoology department at the Lucknow. So there are studies already in the literature. In fact, many studies were conducted so far. Co-crystals have shown promising results with the bioenhancement, if you are talking about the biological effect. Bioenhancement in terms of reaching drug to the blood circulation. If you are talking about investigating the biological effect, how co-crystal behave into the biological effect, this is what you need to understand further. Prof. Poonam, if you can read any questions, please.
Yeah, okay, there are some more questions in the Dropbox. Is there any better computational method rather than SCRF PCM model? It is more for theoretical calculations.
Yeah, if you want to address that question, please. Yeah.
Yeah, model in crystallography. See, the better yeah. Could you?
I would comment on the fact that Professor Poonam to chip in and comment further or agree with it. Any computational calculations you are looking at, you are trying to do the simulations in the gaseous state of the molecule. When you are talking of understanding crystallization or properties, you need to take it into the consideration of kinetic barriers, or understanding in the entropy factors. What you are trying to approximate is enthalpy factors with reference to the crystallization. You need to also take it into the account of entropy factors. That's where the limitation of the systems from straight away understanding the real-time scenarios. But having said this, any computational calculations will help aiding enhancing your understanding.
Yeah. Let me see. There are many more questions. 1 minute.
What type of co-crystals, what type of crystals are used for the pharmaceuticals development? Probably I might not have said this clearly. You have now therapeutic effectiveness on the drug molecule may be there that are coming into the market as new compounds, but they may suffer certain problems, certain physical properties. So you wanted to take such drug. We can say it as a biopharmaceutical classification system, compounds classes 2 and class 4 compounds, where you have poor solubility and good absorption, or both are poor, solubility as well as absorption are poor. Certain compound, certain drugs you wanted to alter the drug behavior, physical behavior in particular. So what kind of additives are suitable? Additives that are consumed and they are still safe. For example, citric acid, for example, nicotinamide. These are vitamins. These are FDA approved, Food and Drug Administration approved compounds, safe compounds if it is consumed. Those additives are good compounds. Again, there should be some, in principle, some interaction possibility at the theory level between your drug and also your additive molecule.
I think there are many more questions. So would you like to address more questions, Venu?
Is fine if if they are if they want to attend. Do we follow any clinical trials? If I find anything particularly interesting to the general audience, probably I'll pick that. Any clinical trials? Sure, in the pharma industry, a lot of clinical trials and much advanced stage of compounds are also, candidates are also there by bigger multinational companies such as Pfizer, Merck, and many other companies are doing.
I think it is very nice to see there's so many questions. The students are like, and participants are coming up with so many questions.
So Arun Kumar, he is asking some interesting questions. Can you explain about the hydrophobic crystal and explain the R factor and its range? I'm not sure if you, by looking at the hydrophobic crystal, you could able to straight away figure out the R factor that it is going to give, but some indicators to you. I mean, if the diffraction ability is good for the CCD instruments these days, R factor is not a problem at all. Even any sort of hydrophobic crystals could be bring it down to below 6 R factor. But having said this, generally his question is about you would expect to see some high R factors for the hydrophobic. So what is acceptable is 6 by the ACTA crystallographical journals and crystallography standards. Anything above is considered needs some more refinement, or if the scientific content of the work is very good, still it is acceptable, but for the crystallography specific journals, they would recommend 6 as R factor. What you are looking at is when you are talking of hydrophobic, I'm just throwing some number, which is you can think of in the range of 4 to 10. Which type of growth method is best to yield good crystals? This is another question he is asking. So generally, solution-based methods may be the best in getting complete crystallization or separation of this material. Having said this, if there are green processing technologies now with the use of online process analytical tools, you could monitor quite closely and ensure the quality of the material and still get good crystals. When you're talking of growth methods, so impurity is something you always need to bear in mind. What about thermal properties? I did not get fully about your question. Thermal properties of which materials? Generally, I would try to a little give a general comment on this. If you prepare co-crystals, generally about 70–80% of the times, co-crystals melting point is in between the starting materials, API and also co-former. It is generally tend to be in between, but there are also cases for either side, but that possibility is less. So if melting point is less, that also indicates some of the physical properties, for instance, may positively influence your solubility. So thermal stability, whether you're talking about the stability, co-crystals generally have in between the melting point, so should be able to, it is generally higher than API, so probably we'll be able to work around.
I think now many questions. The question answer session may be half of your lecture, not
Yes,
at least not half, 1/3 of your lecture. It is very nice, very interactive lectures, and people followed, and they have you arose like many curiosities they had. And thank you very much for joining us with such webinars. And I hope it is a good way to continue interaction with students in India. Not only in India, I think there will be many more students from outside India. Okay. So thank you very much, Venu. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
So we are ending. Yeah, any questions? You have anything to say?
No, just thank you so much, Prof. Poonam, as usual, for your this nice arrangement of e-seminar in this COVID times. So I hope all of you are coping well with the COVID situations, the participants, and thanks all the participants for your time. This is one last slide where I talked about the crystals. If you have still slide sharing. So this is the journal. I am editorial board member. If you really looking into some work like this or around the crystals, you may wanted to explore this journal as well.
Yeah. So thank you very much. Let us thank Dr. Venu once again. Thank you very much. I am ending the session now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.